Thank you so much, Steffi, for that wonderful introduction and for inviting me here. And I can already tell that this will not be my last DLD. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm here to talk to you about the humanities in the digital world. You see, I live in Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley, of course, is home to the most amazing technology companies. The information superhighway, the latest gadgets, the brightest minds. And now also, you may not know this in Germany yet, a TV show. It's called Silicon Valley, and it's a comedy show. I guess to a lot of people, we are actually pretty much of a joke. We're a little crazy. I live in a place where self-driving cars kind of, roam the streets every day in Mountain View. We have Google Glass, which is being worn as people jog, and there's Google X, the research lab of Google, which houses projects that are called moonshots that try to reach the impossible. They include drones that will one day deliver packages to your doors. Sorry, just go back here. And this is called Project Wing. They also have contact lenses for diabetics that can measure the glucose level in your bloodstream, called Project Iris. And then there's Elon Musk's SpaceX, which hopes to take us all to Mars one day. Then, of course, there's Facebook and Twitter and all these social media companies that employ thousands of young people. So I may live in Silicon Valley, but I'm also a humanities professor, Geisteswissenschaftlerin at Stanford University, one of the motors driving Silicon Valley. I have a PhD in English. I teach comparative literature and gender and sexuality studies. I'm an expert on Oscar Wilde, the European fin de siècle, on decadence and modernism. And I'm still heavily invested in books and culture and movies and the history of values and ideas. Art Nouveau, Nietzsche, Sarah Bernard, Wagner, or a modernist avant-garde movie still get me more excited than the latest digital gadget. And Stanford University, as you may know, is also the site of the latest hot debate about online education. And for me, that debate really is a very personal one. I live and breathe it every day. And that is because of this guy. This is my husband, Sebastian Thrun, and he is, or was, still is, a professor at Stanford University. He teaches computer science. He's a former Google Fellow, and now he's also the CEO of this online education company called Udacity. Here he is at DLD 2012 with a major announcement. If we can please roll that movie.
It's impossible. I feel like there's a red pill and a blue pill, and you can take the blue pill and go back to your classroom and lecture your 20 students, but I've taken the red pill, and I've seen Wonderland. It can really change the world, I think, with education. If you can make education free for the world, accessible everywhere, I think we can help people in the developing world, in Africa, and India, and China, to become much better, much stronger, and I think that's going to be the core to a new society. I'm extremely excited about this. I gave up tenure at Stanford. I'm now launching my own platform for online teaching. It actually is launching today. We have, thank you.
So Sebastian actually launched this at DLD about 3 years ago. And you may remember the story, just for those of you who don't know. Sebastian had put his artificial intelligence class at Stanford University online, and the New York Times picked up the story, and in the end, 160,000 people signed up for this, kicking off what the New York Times dubbed the year of the MOOC. It was quite a media frenzy. Everyone was talking about how digital technology would change the world. And just picture yourself a fly on the wall in our living room or at our dinner table. We just had all these conversations about digital technology and online education, how it would change the world. And I was also very excited about the potential, but I kept asking myself, what is the potential for the humanities? What do the humanities actually have to contribute to this? Are we going to get left behind? All this talk about A/B testing, taking quizzes, getting right or wrong answers in math and the sciences and STEM may be very well, but what about grading essays? What about literacy skills that develop over time? Is that even something that the humanities can do? Is online education something that we should even participate in? So I got very excited, but I was also a little skeptical. Now, I happen to think that the humanities actually do have a ton to contribute to online education, not just that, but also to the digital world in general. And I want to share with you this quote, which I find really interesting. It comes from a book by Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, of course, and Jared Cohen, called The New Digital Age. The internet is among the few things humans have built that they truly do not understand. What began as a means of electronic information transmission has transformed into an omnipresent and endlessly multifaceted outlet for human energy and expression. It is a source for tremendous good and potentially dreadful evil, and we're only just beginning to witness its impact on the world stage. The internet is the largest experiment involving anarchy in history. It's quite a statement. So it's clear to me as a humanities person that the next generation needs guidance and education on navigating this anarchic explosion of stories, images, videos, news, and opinion presented online. So much has changed, and yet we are not fully capable of grasping what that change truly entails. We have built the tools. Now we need values and guidance to use those tools to truly make the world a better place. Don't we want and need the humanities to help us do that sooner rather than later? So this actually makes a lot of sense. If you think about what the humanities do, I have this little slide I want to share with you here. This is what the humanities do. We think really deeply about what it means to be human. Our history, our values, our beliefs, our fears, our delusions, creativity. We also study the past. We examine what culture was and has become, what the process is, and who the players are and were, to extrapolate lessons for the future and the present. The other thing we're really good at is that we're very comfortable with ambiguity and open-ended questions, and are skeptical of easy answers. We also teach important critical, analytical, and research skills, critical thinking, clear writing that explains well and makes a great argument. We constantly reflect on values. What are our values? Where do they come from? What is worth preserving? What needs to be changed? And maybe most important of all, we really know storytelling. We understand storytelling and rhetoric and style. We know how stories get told about the world, and we also analyze that. How do they get told? Who gets to tell them and why? So the humanities, I want to say today, are really a great foundation for thinking about communication and values in the digital age. Now, I want to give you some very concrete examples about some of the work that I've been doing at Stanford University to really try to connect my classroom to the world. And of course, I'm a professor in higher education, so a lot of the things that I do have to do with the kinds of things that I teach. But since 2011, since all this kicked off, I've been trying to use blogs and social media, especially social media, a lot to reinvent the kind of things that I teach. And remember, I teach 19th century studies, not exactly sexy topics. So, connecting these things to the world really means to me that my students and I, and hopefully also a larger audience, understand why this stuff is still important and also have fun with it. Now, I just mentioned that I'm using social media a lot, and I have a few examples for that, but I want to share a statistic with you. I just looked this up the other day. So this is how many active users the major social networks have as of March this year. So Facebook has 1.4 billion, and we're talking active users. WhatsApp, 700 million. Twitter, 288 million. Skype, 300 million. Instagram, 300 million. Tumblr, 230 million. So this is not a fleeting phenomenon. And if you're not on Twitter yet, you better get on it, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's a very widespread, very powerful tool for communication. And one of the things that I want to do with my classes is use this tool to also elevate the conversation a bit. So it's not all about the sharing of kittens and talking to your friend in far away somewhere. We really need to model also good citizenship on social media, because that's another thing that hasn't been taught much. So one thing I did on Twitter, which is a little bit unusual maybe, is a Twitter role play. So I teach many times, because I'm an Oscar Wilde expert, I teach the Picture of Dorian Gray, which is a canonical novel, of course. And one day I was sort of in the shower, actually, thinking about what can I do to teach this in a new way. And I actually came up with this idea of doing a role play on Twitter. So my students, so we did this for the first time back in 2012, and my students were supposed to do, to tweet in character for 24 hours and really to tweet with the world. They had to tweet as, Lord Henry and Sybil Vane and not Oscar Wilde, although some people actually did tweet as Oscar Wilde, and some characters in the novel. And they also had to invite other people to do this with them. And it was a roaring success. We had several, hundreds of participants from all over the world. The role play went on all day. It actually spawned international adaptations as well. Some of them that I know were for Dickens novels, and I've done a few other ones myself as well since then. And other teachers have actually assigned this to their classes. And the big catch was that, if your tweet was interesting and original and good enough, Dorian Gray, the character from the novel, would tweet back. So that's actually what my class did. 4 of us were Dorian Gray, and we tweeted back with people, and people got really engaged. Just so you don't think, you just have to take my word for it. I'm a serious literature professor. I teach this stuff very seriously. This is part of what I do. And having fun with these kinds of things is really, there's a serious pedagogical thinking behind it. There is, the idea that it's a language and style challenge. It's really hard. If 140 characters on Twitter is not a lot. And it's really hard to actually tweet, something sensible and interesting in 140 characters. So it's a challenge for the students. They also have to apply the knowledge of historical context, like, for example, aestheticism, decadence, symbolism, about the knowledge about 19th century homoerotic literature, being closeted, things about Oscar Wilde that they know, other novels of the time, to this exercise. And most importantly, the play acting, there's a lot of research that actually shows that using games in the classroom and play acting and sort of, taking yourself out of your analytical mind and really trying to do it a different way enhances learning. So this is not just frivolous and gratuitous, but there's a lot of research backing this up. We also had some other linked social media pages that are still up if you want to check them out. Dorian Gray has a shopping and activities list on Pinterest that you can still contribute to. And then Dorian Gray's portrait was actually, because remember, if you know the novel, the portrait is off in its own attic, kind of shut off from the world, so it couldn't be on Twitter. So we made a Facebook page for it, where on Facebook, Dorian Gray's portrait was kind of participating in this. And it was really wonderful because students had this sense of a much larger public, not just fan fiction, but also a reading public that is really engaged in literature. And that goes beyond them. There are many students at the same time in the whole world that are studying this novel. So connecting with them kind of made it a really fun and interesting experience, and widened, threw open the doors of the classroom. So we also had fun, as I mentioned, and you've probably been trying to decipher those tweets up there. I just want to share a few with you. So the one in the corner down there, there were a lot of in-jokes, and this is an in-joke about the fact that it's a homoerotic novel where everything is still closeted. So this is Dorian tweeting. Spent the longest time in the closet, couldn't decide what to wear for the opera tonight. And then we also had some surprises. Some other participants that we didn't know started actually mashing up our assignment, which was not about other novels at all, and they kind of brought in characters from other books. So this is Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre. Dorian, my boy, I have a proposition for you. Care to exchange attics and the responsibilities that lie therein? So if you know that novel, there's Bertha up in the attic. She's kind of a little strange and crazy. So there's another in-joke there. So from the passive, solitary page, we really move students to literature as an active social experience. And we can use social media to do this. So I'm going to move on to a different assignment. I'm just going to share a few assignments with you very quickly because there's also a serious motivation behind this, which is that I really want my students to start contributing to a democratic conversation that also has humanities contents in it. And so, as you know, Wikipedia is a very important open, open source Wikipedia encyclopedia, and it's used all over the world. But there's also, if you see, some really concerning statistics. The statistics are still, this is from 2013, there was a study about the gender gap. The people who actually write and edit Wikipedia are 80, or in 2013, were 84% male. And then also, if you see nationality, it's very heavily slated towards the Western world, the Northern and Western world. So, the US and Germany are the countries who contribute the most. So this is not in itself a problem. It only becomes a problem when you look at some of the contents in Wikipedia. And my assignment that I now do with all my classes was inspired by what was called a feminist wiki-storming initiative by a really interesting new group. It's called FemTechNet, femtechnet.org, who are basically using technology, women in technology. They're using their own expertise and interests to kind of change not just the content, but also kind of the style of Wikipedia. And so they've been doing all these assignments where they kind of contribute things about women authors, women artists, feminist topics to Wikipedia. So mine was not a feminist assignment most recently, but we use this in the class. Students literally have to learn how to use Wikipedia, how to edit it. And once they do that, they become really empowered and feel much more agency. And hopefully they will be able to do this in the future as well. So you have to give them the chance to kind of learn these tools. Very quickly, students turning into teachers. This is another thing that the internet allows me to do. I had this idea, why not at the end of a class, instead of having students write a term paper just for me that only I read, why not have them share the newly acquired knowledge with the world? And so they literally, one of my classes was the queer literature and film class, had, they produced these teaching materials for other people on certain topics that they cared about. A lot of the students that I teach in my queer studies classes are queer identified or queer allies, and so the motivation is very high. They would like to contribute more knowledge to the world, and why not do that from the classroom? It really increases motivation. If you know that a lot of people will read what you produce for a class, it actually makes sure that you do, ensures that you do a really good job. So yeah, these students were wonderful, and they just contributed to things and put them on the internet. Another one, this is not my example, but it's an example from a colleague of mine at then Duke University, Kathy Davidson, where the students, instead of writing individual papers at the end, collaborated and published an electronic book, literally, on the subject that they had studied together, and then they sold it on Amazon.com. So I think actually it was free or very little money, but the idea was that they had to find out about the self-publishing industry. This is another thing. It's very empowering for people today to actually find out about this and to know that they can publish things themselves. And by making it an explicit assignment in a humanities class, we can actually give students the opportunity to actually find out how this works. My last example is actually a class. This is something that is motivated by, again, my marriage in a way. I'm very interested in interdisciplinary teaching and learning. And Stanford has a wonderful new program called CS+X, which is a joint major program. CS stands for computer science, and X is for any discipline in the humanities. A lot of them have signed up, so music, philosophy, so you can do a joint major in computer science and English, joint major in computer science and philosophy, and many other humanities disciplines. And we actually, my husband Sebastian and I taught the very first class that was really, truly interdisciplinary in the program. It was called Literature and Social Online Learning. And instead of studying literature, which we did a little bit in the course, but we were concerned with actually building apps and doing things, in the course, it was a project course, digitally that would allow us to share literature and our love of literature with the wider public. So students were coding apps, and they were all working in interdisciplinary teams, so they really had to talk to each other in computer science and humanities to kind of bridge the gap and share their knowledge and their interests with a wider public. This is just one little slide I want to show with you. This is kind of just to back up my own motivation about this. The humanities majors, and these, you see the graph here, these are actually the blue line, are all the majors in humanities and the arts combined. So not just one subject, but many, like the one that you see at the bottom, art history, English, many other ones. All of them combined have actually stayed stable, but also fallen down a little bit. Whereas, as you can see, especially around 2008, we have a huge spike now in numbers of computer science majors. And the numbers are, just to be very precise, all the humanities majors combined in 2000, we had 691, declined down to 446 in 2014. And then the computer science majors, we had 210 in 2000. Again, remember, this is just one major, not many. And they rose up to 574 in 2014. And of course, 2008 was also the time when the housing and the banking crisis hit. So we're just imagining that a lot of, especially parents, were concerned that their kids should, learn something or take a major that they could actually make some money with. It's kind of difficult with English sometimes. Okay, wrapping up, I just want to mention one little thing. I've talked about higher education today and humanities and higher education, but I really believe that this has to start much earlier. Digital literacy is something that is really, it has to start basically in kindergarten. So you can't really see him right now. I'm not going to show you where he is, but my own son is in that picture. Our son, Jasper, actually goes to Khan Lab School, which is a new school that was literally just founded in September in Mountain View. It's affiliated with Khan Academy. Some of you may know about this. This is an online service site. It's a non-for-profit that makes a lot of online classes, especially for math and the sciences, that actual schools use. And so this is the first real school, and Khan Lab School is also project-based. It's kind of the best and sort of alternative new education. But basically, it integrates digital literacy from very early on. And I encourage you to check it out. It's a really interesting new model. I'm sure you'll hear about it in the news very soon. Again, wrapping up, digital literacy has to be integrated with literacy education early on. The goal should be that people must be public contributors to knowledge and intelligent debate on the internet, not just passive consumers. And then we have to model and practice good citizen rules for social media. Also embrace global collaboration and knowledge exchange, and really foster digital creativity early on. My last slide here, I want to share with you a comment that students made in our literature and social online learning class. And I think it's just a wonderful moment that really captures this. I really share this sentiment. I believe we live in a Gutenberg moment. So this is what the student said. Right now, we may be the monks of the Middle Ages, mourning the loss of their handwritten books to the printing press, when really we should be embracing this new technology, which will make what is really important, the literature and the stories being told, accessible to more people. So I don't want to be the monk. I would rather be the person charging forward. And as far as my own dinner table and my own marriage is concerned, with my husband, I'm very happy that he's actually one of the allies in Silicon Valley about the importance of the humanities. And I don't usually like for him to have the last word, especially not in a forum like this, but today it's actually okay. And we're going to end with a little clip of Sebastian talking to you, if we can roll that movie, please.
I'm not a humanities scholar, but I think this is the age and the time and the opportunity for humanities. Humanities always thrived on new ways of people interacting, of forming cultural context, and so on. And the new media, be it social networks, be it Twitter, be it blogs, and so on, really changed the fundamental fabric of society in a way never happened before. I think this is fantastic for humanities and a great opportunity.
So thank you very much.